tell you, there's nothing worse than sitting around waiting to die. I tell you, there's nothing worse.
Diagnosed with a fatal disorder, he was told he had only 2 years to live. But then, a doctor performed the impossible. And now the former patient is using his passion to help save others.
Cancer. It's one of the most frightening words a patient can hear from his doctor, especially when the doctor next says that nothing can be done. And for a New Jersey father, this was the devastating news that he then had to share with his family. However, his unwillingness to accept what amounted to a death sentence gave this otherwise tragic story a happy ending for a lot of people.
We met in Queens, in Rego Park, in 1966. I was friendly with somebody who lived next door to Monica, and his father came over to me with his Italian accent and says, "I got a beautiful girl for you." And he was right.
David and Monica Gorin have been in love ever since, raising a family first in New York and then later in the New Jersey suburbs. At 47 years old, David appeared to be in the prime of his life. He was working as an accountant and attending sports shows with his son Neil, mingling with baseball greats like Yogi Berra, Ted Williams, and Joe DiMaggio. Then, out of the blue, doctors discovered that David had a rare cancerous tumor in his abdomen. A tumor as large as a full-term fetus, or 2 basketballs. The diagnosis was about as grim as it gets.
3 doctors at 3 oncologists told me that the tumor I had was inoperable. I was told that I couldn't survive the surgery, and I was essentially told I had 2 years to live. And then the words were, quote, "There isn't a doctor in the country that can remove this tumor."
I'll never forget sitting across the table from the doctor in his office, and he asked me if I had any questions, and I asked him what were the chances of you being wrong? What were the chances that this 8-month pregnancy that was in my husband's abdomen was benign? And he said to me, "There's absolutely no chance of me being wrong."
Then David did one of the hardest things he's ever had to do. He told his children that he wouldn't be around to watch them grow up.
My son was 15 years old, and I sat down with him, and I said, "You know, I'm not going to be here. But when you're going to grow up and count the situations, you just got to do the right thing." And that's what I said to my daughters, too. I told them that, you know, you're going to just have to grow up a little quicker than you might have otherwise.
It was 1992, and David had to face the hard reality of dying before the age of 50.
I got to tell you, there's nothing worse than sitting around waiting to die. I tell you, there's nothing worse.
Still, David battled on. He continued going to sports shows and underwent painful chemotherapy treatments at New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center. But his death seemed a certainty.
We knew what we were dealing with, and yet I wanted to believe that somewhere there was a doctor who could help us.
Incredibly, the Gorins found that doctor just across the street from where David was receiving his chemotherapy. Dr. Murray Brennan is chairman of the surgery department at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. He said David's so-called inoperable tumor could, in fact, be taken out.
He came with a very difficult problem, which, if not treated, would certainly be the cause of his demise. The important issue was there was something we could do about it, and that was to remove it.
4 years ago, David had that life-saving surgery. His recovery was painful, but Dr. Brennan says he's now as good as cured. Today, the Gorins are back at the doctor's office, remembering how, at their most desperate moment, he gave them hope.
And I only had one question, and I never got a chance to ask the question, because just at the end he said, "And by the way, you can handle this surgery." And then he stood up, he put his hand right here, and he said, "My friend, you're going to be all right."
Well, we have a life now because of you.
It's okay.
We have our life back. I mean, you know what? We're trying to help other people now.
Well, for the Dodger fans,
The Gorins want the next cancer patient to get the right diagnosis the first time. So they're taking David's passion for sports and using it to make a difference. For the last 3 years, the family has organized an auction of valuable sports collectibles, raising $250,000 for fellowships in cancer surgery. Dr. Emery Minard is one of those fellowship recipients. When he's finished working alongside Dr. Brennan in New York, Minard wants to take the knowledge back to his native Louisiana.
I plan on going back to Louisiana, and I'd like to use the expertise that I've gained here in New York at Memorial to go back there and serve some people who may be underserved.
Another fighter on cancer's front lines is the Gorins' own daughter, Risa, a first-year medical student at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey.
His illness taught me what kind of doctor I wanted to become. A physician who is more in tune with treating the whole person, treating them emotionally, not just physically, seeing them as more than a disease.
Once again, the Gorin family is back on track. David and Monica can laugh with their children and each other, never forgetting a lesson that their doctor taught them one rainy afternoon.
He said, you look outside and you see that weather? He said, well, one day you'll be sitting at home, and he said to Monica, you'll look outside and you're going to say, what a miserable day. And then your husband will turn around and look outside and say, what a beautiful day. And he was right. Every day's a beautiful day.
I have to tell you, I have a personal connection to this story. I was an auctioneer at one of the Gorins' fundraisers, and I've gotten to know David and Monica just a little bit, and they are incredible people. And I think it's wonderful that through their selfless efforts, more patients facing cancer, well, they just may be able to survive because the Gorin circle of love just continues to grow. We're going to be right back.